this last weekend in the fight world, wow. You want to talk about a shocker. You want to talk about a surprising story, a Cinderella story, if you will. Someone who is the ultimate rags to riches story. You had in the main event at UFC 273 down in Sydney, Sean Strickland upset Israel, the last style bender, Adesanya, who coming into that fight, Adesanya was a 6-1 favorite, one of the biggest betting favorites in UFC title fight history, mind you. Sean Strickland went out there and just had one of the most sensational performances from an underdog in a title fight that I can recall, and it's largely in part for this reason. Now, folks, he didn't just hit a home run and clip Israel Adesanya, as we've seen in certain fights, and it's not to slight the title victory of someone like, say, a Leon Edwards, but Leon was losing for 24 out of the 25 minutes scheduled of that fight until he hit the home run, the Hail Mary, the whatever the phrase that you want to coin there. He was losing that fight all the way until he landed the lucky shot and was able to get his hand raised. This was not the case for Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland, for actual quantifiable measures, won 4 out of the 5 rounds in that fight. Some people had him winning all 5 rounds. That's 25 minutes of a fight that he was beating arguably the best striker in UFC history. Definitely the best overall striker in modern UFC history, and for sure post Anderson Silva, in my personal opinion. Now, in every measurable metric, Sean Strickland was at a disadvantage coming into this fight. But you know what you can't measure, ladies and gentlemen? Heart, grit, determination, the will to win and survive against all odds. The very last thing that Sean Strickland said to his coach, Eric Nixick of Extreme Couture, before making the walk out there was, "To the death, coach." And then you hear that drum start hitting, you hear the trumpet start going when Johnny comes marching in, hits the airwaves, and you see what looked to be a rather tense and what people thought was, oh man, Sean looks like he knows he's walking out to the slaughterhouse. He looks like he knows that he's going to be sacrificed, blah, 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 blah. You know who didn't believe that? Sean Strickland and Eric Nixick. They get through a couple of rounds in the fight, and, Sean, maybe after the third round, I don't remember exactly which round that it was that they caught the audio bite, but you have him maybe, thinking like, okay, I'm hanging with this guy, but am I really here? Is this a bit of imposter syndrome? Like, is it really this easy what's going on right now? And then you have the sound clip that will be played over and over from Eric Nixick that we can go beat this blank blank. Right then and there, you kind of saw a little bit of a fire start to burn brighter in Sean Strickland's eyes. And then as the championship rounds wore on, especially toward the latter stages of that 5th round, Sean Strickland was starting to believe. He had that actualization stage that he just beat Israel Adesanya and he is becoming the world champion. When have you ever seen somebody in the cage, especially in a title fight, as it goes to the waning final seconds? Do you see someone screaming in Israel's face? I mean, really and truly, as far as this contest goes, let's not get it twisted. Everything needed to happen right for Sean, and it did. He needed to fight the fight of his life. Check. He needed to do something to make Izzy respect him despite his lack of power. Check. He needed a little bit of luck for Izzy to be a step slow, a bit off, and just miscalculated in terms of some of his movements and reactions from his normal self. Check. All of these things happened in favor of Sean Strickland, and sometimes the fight gods work in your favor. Sean went from the internet clowning him last summer with iCarly memes after he got knocked out by Alex Pereira to now giving him side-by-side comparisons with Floyd Mayweather and the Philly shell defense that he uses with his boxing. With a lot of grit, countless sparring rounds, and just a will to go out there and just fight, a love for fighting. Sean Strickland went from the outhouse to the penthouse in just a year, ladies and gentlemen. If that is not an inspirational story of someone who, when you know Sean's background and know the trauma that he comes from, the childhood abuse, the everything up along the way, and the heel stance that he had kind of coming up along the way, saying some of the most unhinged, unfiltered, and ridiculous things that maybe made him polarizing to some folks. But you then have him, as he comes into this fight with Israel, in the press conference, you started to see Sean to take a pro wrestling term, and we'll talk a little bit more about this connection that some of these MMA promos and pro wrestling are going to have as the future grows. But you had Sean have a face turn. He went from being the heel, the bad guy, to becoming the face. In that press conference against Izzy, the Australian people started to rally behind Sean Strickland. Sean started talking about some of the exploits of Izzy, which, again, as a fighter, absolutely love Izzy. On the personal level, some of the things that Izzy does are kind of weird. It just, my personal opinion. Hey, different strokes for different folks. But, again, you have Sean Strickland now the world champion, and, does that beg the question, is the PC culture era over? I mean, if you were to have told me that there were two certain words used on the broadcast the other night, and it wasn't Sean Strickland who did it, I'd have thought that it was crazy. But, that's where we're at right now in the combat sports world. And to quote Dana White, hey, this is the fight game. Crazy things happen. But I also want to give a shout out to the Machine Gun Chepe Mariscal for going down under as a big underdog with a quick turnaround following his UFC debut against Trevor Peek, going down there against the dangerous prospect in Jack Jenkins. Said it before this fight that if he is still breathing and is within range to touch you in any way, Chepe is a live dog who is not only dangerous, but can finish the fight from absolutely anywhere. The judo black belt did just that. He won by TKO after dislocating Jenkins' elbow, using a judo throw, and again, the rest is history. Just like that, 2 fights later in the UFC, Chepe is he's 2-0. So congratulations to the Elevation Fight Team product there. Stick around after the break, folks. We're going to be covering this week's UFC Vegas card. Talk a little bit about the Colorado Jiu-Jitsu Club event over the weekend. Did Dricus du Plessis get put on the back burner? And I'll slug it out for 3 rounds and give you an introduction to the Fan Cave crew. This is Jordan Kurtz here with the MMA Plug presented by the Fan Cave on 98.1 FM, Mile High Sports Radio. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. That helps us continue to produce this original MMA content and bring it for you every single week. Tune in to the MMA Plug presented by Fan Cave on 98.1 FM, Mile High Sports Radio.